Welcome to the No Limit, No Boundaries UFO podcast. Veteran UFO investigators Dan Spell and Mike Pinicello take on all aspects of the UFO phenomena with insight and honesty. It's all fair game here. No limits, no boundaries. And now, here are your hosts, Dan and Mike.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our show. Mike and I tonight are going to be discussing full and open UFO disclosure and all that entails. We're going to be talking about things such as the economic impacts, the possible cultural impacts, possible national security issues. We're just going to go down the list and have a good discussion of what UFO disclosure, should it happen, what it will look like. We're also going to ponder if it should take place. Are the world's people ready for full and open UFO disclosure? So, Mike, what do you think?
I think this is an exciting conversation, and it's definitely a timely conversation, with the news since December of, 2000, when that New York Times article started? Was it 2017?
I believe it was 2017 when that article was published.
Yeah, I mean, UFOs have been in the news ever since, and then with the congressional hearings in June of last year, this is a great and timely discussion we're going to have.
It
topic that is.
So I guess, Mike, the first question we ought to ask ourselves: what is full and open UFO disclosure? What is it that the government, the military, the UN, whomever, what are they going to disclose? Could it be ongoing interactions with the entities? I think we've all heard rumors of that, but I have not seen any official proof yet. Are we disclosing that these are physical entities from another planet that actually get in their spaceships and fly here?
I think someone hoped that.
Could these beings, whatever they are, actually be from within the Earth? We have heard some discussions of that on the internet. Some of these are from right here. Some even believe that they could be from within the Earth. Are they physical beings from another dimension or multiple dimensions? Could these physical entities be from the future? Some people have theorized that these beings are us from 1,000,000 years from now or 50,000 years from now, coming back to take a look at what's going on. Again, nothing has been proven yet, but these are some of the theories that are being kicked around. Could these entities be purely non-physical from other dimensions? In other words, their energy, they're sentient beings, but they don't have a physical body like we have. Or, right, Mike, could they be some combination? At some points they can take on physical characteristics, such as the Greys, or can they change their appearance to be whatever they think the human mind wants them to be?
Those are great questions.
They are. And I listened to a podcast today. A gentleman named John D'Souza was being interviewed. John is a retired FBI agent. He worked a lot, according to what he says, when he was with the FBI on these type of cases, paranormal stuff and UFOs. And D'Souza was saying that he believes that these are in fact not physical beings the way that we know, like us. they can take on physical features, but they're really immaterial. And these craft that people are seeing, he believes those are actually probably non-physical as well. They're not just metal. They're not tin cans flying around in space. That's John D'Souza's theory, but I don't know.
Well, those are valid questions, and in our field, and you probably would know this, there's a lot of sightings that fit each one of these definitions. Ongoing interactions with alien entities. I mean, we've all heard the stories of underground bases where the military and the ETs work together. Physical entities from another solar system. I mean, that's just a traditional UFO. They come on these gravity drives, which we kind of talked about in previous podcasts. Physical entities from Earth. I mean, there's all kinds of cases out there of beings coming from the water out into the atmosphere, that they have underground bases there, that they just live there. I mean, the whole hollow Earth theory gets into that, and all the cases for those. Physical entities from another dimension. I mean, that kind of is like Skinwalker Ranch and all the strange sightings that they have, and the craft that come in and out of what appears to be their portals. Physical entities from another time. I mean, that's kind of Bentwaters. That was one theory thrown out for the Bentwaters UFO sighting. Non-physical entities from another dimension. Again, Skinwalker, you got the orbs that they see coming out, different color orbs. Physical and non-physical entities, those are like the blue aliens. They look like, I don't know if you ever heard about them, but there's a great book on them. Talks about these beings that are blue. Some are physical, some are energy, but they're all blue. And they have a very rich history with the Native American culture. In fact, the books I'm thinking of, the author went around and interviewed a lot of Native Americans and talked about their interactions with these physical and non-physical blue entities. So there's UFO cases in UFO. There's cases in ufology that will cover all of these. I think personally, full disclosure would answer everything. That the government will come out and say, all of the above is true, and here's the examples, and here's what we've been doing with them. But that would be my idea of what what I would expect as full and open disclosure. How are you?
One day I hope that we do get these answers. What worries me now is the government, the military, governments around the world as well, simply do not know. A lot of people believe that this is it's a big conspiracy and they want to keep us dumb and in the dark. And I heard an interesting quote somewhere online, and it was something like this, that the American government will not reveal what it cannot control. And
Well, that makes a lot of
think
sense.
that's if they don't understand it, they can't control it, they can't keep it contained. That just may be their philosophy. We don't deal with it.
I knew
Just a thought.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thought. So I used to have a member of my little UFO group that I have here in Connecticut who was in the military, and we had a discussion about disclosure and why don't we have it. And he said, well, think about it this way. We're the most powerful military currently on the planet. Our Air Force is the most powerful Air Force on the planet. And you have these craft moving in and out of our air defense systems at their leisure, and we can't do anything to stop that. That is not something you want to tell our enemies, that there is
exactly right.
We can't control what's in our airspace. And I think that goes to what you're saying about they don't want to disclose what they don't know. they don't want to also disclose that they are powerless or to stop this. Like, yeah,
Right.
we don't know what this is, but we also can't stop what this is.
Right. And we're going to delve into the national security implications of it a little bit later.
Sounds good.
So, full and open disclosure that all current and past UFO related information is shared with the public by the government, by the military, US, allied, and yes, Russia and China, all of them, by defense contractors, by medical professionals, by universities and labs who may have been involved in research, perhaps even back engineering craft that we have obtained, by the world's great religions. And I think I added this bottom bullet there, Mike, because those non-human entities are going to be part of the big disclosure as well.
Mhm.
At some point they're going to make, if the world says, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to tell everybody, they're going to be a big part of that disclosure. They would have to be, I would think.
You need some kind of evidence to prove to the people.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah. And other things that might be revealed in the UFO's full disclosure is contact with non-human entities, alleged that different governments have had around the world. Past wrongdoings, alleged wrongdoings, are going to have to be acknowledged and dealt with. Perhaps that means that people who did things they ought not to have done will be given some type of immunity from prosecution. And that's just if they did things wrong. But and the people who, in fact, the National Defense Authorization Act for 2023 does exactly that for whistleblowers, though. And we're going to deal with that a little bit later.
yes.
Another fact of full disclosure would be off-world technology that we may have will be revealed and in some cases shared, particularly if it's of benefit to humanity. Not all of it, I'm sure, could be shared because of national security issues, but some will. And of course, on the bottom one, the non-human entities would openly show themselves.
I don't
What we
know.
don't know about these beings, Mike, is of course is that are they friendly? Are they neutral, or are they not friendly to the human race?
Well,
I don't think most people know. We can't answer that question yet.
well, it depends on how you want to answer it. So if you go into the unsubstantiated UFO sightings or abductions,
Mm-hmm.
although I know maybe some of our listeners would disagree with that, but they do say that there are good, bad, and neutral aliens in this whole like disclosure involvement movement that they have with us. But as for written documents or like physical evidence, no, there is none. So there's two paths you can go down with that. And I think our path in this podcast is the evidence. And there really is no evidence to show that.
Right.
However, I would go with the assumption that if they truly had malice against us, they would have already done something. I mean, we're not going to be able to stop them if they want to take over this planet.
Yeah, I think you're right. If they really wanted to do it quickly, if they wanted to conquer us, they could do it quickly. And if they wanted to destroy the planet, they probably could have done that pretty quickly too. So yeah, I don't think it's their intent to destroy the human race and the planet. It may be something else. We just don't know for sure. The 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. Section 1673 deals exactly with the UFO UAP phenomenon, although they're calling it unidentified anomalous phenomenon now. The key thing there is the whistleblower protection that it affords. So from what I've heard, from hearing, people out in the UFO community talk, is that there are people ready and willing to come forward, and they probably are doing that. We're not aware of it yet because of that whistleblower protection. Some of them are willing to come forward and say, yes, I've worked on these special access projects that involved off-world vehicles or entities. That's a big thing, that NDAA.
It is, but it isn't. The problem I have with this is that it's a lot like with the secret space program, with the whistleblowers with the secret space program.
Mm-hmm.
If they come out with just a lot of stories, no one's going to believe them. And you've heard the various people who are whistleblowers for the secret space program, and some of the tales they tell you are completely out in left field, and they sound so deep in the weeds that they're not even believable. One of the things about Lou Alessandro and some of the more credible ones is that they produce receipts. Let's just go with Lou Alessandro. He has emails showing what he did in the program, and that was been a FOIA request have been put in by other UFO investigators, and gotten those emails from the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. Obviously, those match the discussions to the videos that were released. So there's evidence to show that his providence, there is something there, that he is a credible whistleblower, sort of. I guess that's probably the best word for him. And even with that evidence, there's a lot of controversy with him, and within the field of, where is he truly a whistleblower? Is it counterintelligence? Is it this? Is it that? So what I'm saying is, even with producing some of the receipts, there's still controversy. There's still not everything is known. So what I worry about with this whistleblower thing, and it's great that a lot of people are going to come out and come forward, but if they're just telling stories, they're going to fall right into the secret space program whistleblowers, and no one is going to believe him. And we're at the point now where they have to start producing receipts. So I hope that, this whistleblower protection, and I'm not saying that they need to, spill classified documents with them. I mean, I guess you could probably say being a whistleblower is similar to that, but that's semantics. You can get into legality of that later. But there has to be a providence for these people to come forward and be able to verify what they're saying is probably true, because we can say for certainty that they are in a position to have known that information. Because for all we know, we could get some low-level person coming out who will never have access to any of this information and talking about spaceships that are built by humans and aliens flying around Mars and Neptune and Pluto, for all we know. And there's no way to prove that. So this is great, but to play devil's advocate, it could also hurt us a lot too.
Yeah, you're right. It could go both or either way. I think what's key here is that when these whistleblowers come forward, they're going to be testifying under oath. Short of trotting out a spacecraft that we've back engineered, I think testimony under oath will carry a lot of weight.
Wow.
So we'll see, though. I mean, we have interesting times coming.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope that this brings in a new wave. I mean, look at what Lou has done in 3 years or 4 years that he's been out, depending on when you count his actual coming out.
Yeah,
Look how much the field has changed. Look how much more discussion there is.
sure. Okay. Now, the question that we can get into now, Mike, is should this disclosure happen? Seems like everybody wants it, but is it something that the human race is ready for? That's a big question. There are some pros to this, and there are some cons. The very basic level, I think most people would agree in general, the people deserve the truth from their government and military. And on the surface, I totally agree with that. People can handle the truth. The human beings are mature enough now that we can deal with the reality of whatever these beings are, whatever these machines are. And another one people are talking a lot about is that human race civilization will advance by new technology that is being either given to us or taken by us. And of course, a lot of people believe that these entities will, they and their technology will save the human race from destroying ourselves and the planet. And that once all this comes out, it'll be a big kumbaya moment and peace will prevail around the world. Those are the pros. What do you think?
Yeah.
Did I miss any? Are there other good reasons why?
No, I don't think you missed anything. I think you've hit the main bullet points, and anything that you might have missed would fall under that. I mean, the big bullet points: deserving the truth. People can handle it. I think we're at the point now where you know the original reasoning behind it, from what my understanding was, is the Rand Corporation study saying that people would collapse. But we have been so inundated with ufology and movies around ufology, the field of ufology. I mean, there's a lot of people that are interested. They read the books. There's a lot of books out there that it's changing the perception. I think if you were going to have disclosure, the best way to do it would be slowly. And I think that might be what they're doing now. And I think that will negate a lot of these cons that we're going to look at next. So I don't think you missed anything. I think what you have are the real reasons, are the correct reasons for disclosure, and cover any subsets that people would have had would fall under one of these main categories you have.
I think so. I mean, a lot of that is philosophically oriented, like you know, people anticipate that these beings are benign or friendly, and they're going to solve the world's problems. But who knows? You know, that would be nice, but human nature is what it is.
And
I
you
don't
know,
know how
I think
these entities would change human nature.
Well, you know, getting back to the previous slide about would they be able to take us over or not, and if they were,
But which one, Mike? Which slide?
the non-entities
That one?
openly, yeah. You know, we said that if they wanted to take us over, they would have taken us over. But that, I think the assumption that they're all good is a bit naive, because there is evil in the world.
Sure.
And I think that might be to me personally, I think that's a universal truth. So maybe the entities that we are involved with whether they're physical entities, non-physical entities like energy being. I think that there's going to be the opposite, the yin to the yang. They're probably out there.
Yeah.
So the assumption that it'll bring world peace, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we're not going to know unless we go
Unless
down
it
that
happens.
road.
Right. You're absolutely correct. So on the flip side of the coin, what if the truth, like whatever that is so horrid that everything we think, know, feel, believe about our existence on this planet is wrong? And
This
what
is
if
where you need that little screenshot of Jack Nicholas from A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth.
that's exactly right? What if it is bad? I mean, and I can't quote whoever it was that said it is. The truth is indeed horrific.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I just can't quote anything more than that.
I also heard that they think that it's demonic in nature. So we're
Yeah.
talking not about, that's more of the non-physical entities, and
Right.
that gets into the spiritual warfare. So how do you fight that? How do you
That's
fight
a
it if it is
very,
a
very
demonic?
good
How do
question.
you fight that?
And then other cons, people across the world will freak out. They'll just go berserk because there's other life forms visiting us. I'm not so sure that would happen unless the truth is indeed, and I can't even, it's hard for me to come up with an example of what would really create a global panic unless whatever these are is indeed horrific. And what about religions, Mike? Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Native American religions, all of them.
Well, the Native American religions, if you have a rich history with sky people, from the Aborigines down to the Native Americans in South America and in North America. It is just part of their history. So I don't think that they would see it as anything else and that the sky people have returned. I can't speak for them, but reading their stories and their tales, I mean, even Bigfoot is in their tales, in their history. So I don't think that they'll be upset. I think, you're always going to have religious zealots that are going to go to the extreme. That's inevitable on all points of the religious front. I mean, that's human nature.
Right.
But if you look at the specifically the Catholic Church was always about, with Galileo and a lot of the other scientists, they condemned them, and it was Earth was the center of the earth. Earth was the center of the universe, yada, yada, yada. But recently they come out a few years ago saying that if there are aliens, they're created by God, we'll accept them into, you have to accept them. I think one pope, I don't remember what it was it Benedict maybe, who said we'll baptize them. My point is that religions are starting to change their views on it, saying that, they don't exist, that they're demonic, that they're not that they are. And, just incidentally, the Catholic Church has a very robust astronomy program. The Jesuits, I think it's the Jesuits, own a number of telescopes out in Arizona, out around the world they work. So they might already have seen something. Who knows? Who knows what's in their archives? I mean, they have a secret archives that, it's very, very limited. No one can get into that. So who knows what's in there?
And I believe the Mormon faith has a lot about extraterrestrials as part of their teachings.
I don't know too much about the Mormon faith, but if any of our listeners do, send us an email.
Oh yeah, we'd love to hear from anybody of any faith to get your take on it. If you can share what your own religion believes, we'd love to hear from you.
So I don't think that that's a con anymore. I think these are older cons,
Yeah.
back in the 40s and 50s, the original reasons for why they held back on disclosure. But I don't think now in the 21st century, these cons still are that valid, should I say.
Okay. How about the next one, Mike? The global economy will collapse, and the thinking there is that if we got our hands, or if we even have our hands on the technology already that makes fossil fuels like oil and coal obsolete, that the global economy would just implode because of that, because it's an oil-based global economy.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I guess it depends on how willing the governments and those that control the economy. I mean, let's not be naive. There are forces outside of governments that actually control the economy,
Right.
like the Fed, for example, are willing to embrace new technology. You can have disclosure and not reveal the technology too. I mean, there's this assumption that one goes with the other, but if you were to have aliens land on the front lawn of the White House and introduce themselves and talk about who they are, and then get up in their spacecraft and leave, there's that, who could say that there's ever an exchange of technology? It could have just been a first step for first contact, a welcome, sort of say, or we're around, sort of thing.
Right.
So I think it depends on what form of disclosure we have. If they do a mea culpa and say, yeah, we've been keeping all this secret, my bad, this is all the technology, then I think the universal universe of that's wrong terminology, but the global economy will only suffer if people don't adapt to that technology. So I guess it's comes down to, do you want to relinquish power? Because if you have free energy and everyone has a little fusion generator in their house, making, cold fusion generator in their house, then you're completely independent. Or if they create a replicator, like what they have in Star Trek, and you can replicate your own food and materials and clothes, then you don't need people. You're completely self-sufficient. So I guess it's how much technology is released and how willing people are to embrace that. But it definitely, I think, would be an uncomfortable environment until there is an equilibrium.
Well, even let's just say, and this is strictly hypothetical, next week, full disclosure takes place. And part of that disclosure is the government says, look, we have this technology, we can provide access to either free or very cheap energy for everyone on this planet. Even if that happens, you don't just snap your fingers and transition from the infrastructure we have now to that new technology. It would take some time to make that happen. So that may soften any change in the economy too, as that transition to new technology takes place.
Well, we just had that. What was it? A couple of weeks ago, the Department of Energy announced that they created cold fusion for like a microsecond.
Yeah.
The economy didn't collapse.
No.
People just kind of like, oh, that's cool, and went on their business. And I think that's probably a great example of how this technology would have to be expanded. Because yeah, you're right. Just because we have the blueprints to build a cold fusion reactor from these aliens doesn't mean we can go and start building them tomorrow. We have to.
No, you're absolutely right. It takes a lot of technology. It takes probably new machining technology or capabilities.
And that, well, you will know that they would slow walk this out. I mean, they're not gonna. It would come in drips and drips until eventually, kind of, maybe you'll have a little cold fusion machine and you start working your way up.
Right.
We're talking decades. We're not talking like a few years. I mean, maybe our grandkids would see it if there was disclosure next week. But,
Yeah.
So I don't think that the argument, again, for a global collapse of the economy is still a valid reason for disclosure, because we see so many examples today. And the best example is the cold fusion. The markets went down, but they didn't go down because of that. They're going down for other reasons,
Right.
Economic reasons that have nothing to do with the disclosure of that we created cold fusion for like a microsecond. But it's out there now, and no one is boycotting the gas pumps, saying we want.
I don't think Chevron or ExxonMobil have gone bankrupt yet. So
no, not yet. They're still drilling for oils. In fact, as we speak, the House is trying to vote for more drilling rights. So, the world is still marching on the petrol dollar.
Sure. And then, Mike, the last two we're going to delve into a little bit later with national security and global order. That if the aliens come and they're revealed, they're here, that somehow everything will just implode and anarchy will reign, or worse, a global war because of it. I guess you could say those are possible, but I don't know that they are likely.
Only if the aliens are bad and they try to invade us. I mean, if it's a global war like World War II or World War III on a massive scale, then governments are going to fail just because we're going to be in this war with aliens. And you can probably pretty much assure that they have the technology to level and destroy cities. But I think the government is robust enough to survive.
Okay.
We can thank the Cold War for that. We built enough redundancy.
So, has some form of disclosure already happened in a form of a salami slice or subtle disclosure? Have we been acclimated to the fact that these entities, these crafts, are in fact real? From all the movies, the music that contained references to UFOs, books, TV shows, and documentaries. And of course, more recently, the release of those military videos showing, the latest one, I guess, was a transmedium object shown just above the sea and then going down into it. So has it happened already, at least partially? I think it has.
I think it has.
On some level. They just haven't made the grand announcement yet.
Well, I think this gets back to what we were talking about earlier about what they originally thought in the 1940s and 50s, when the decision was to keep it confidential, to keep it disclosure from not happening. But now, I mean, some of the more recent polls on this, it's like 80%. It's a huge number of people are think that there's alien life in the universe. So, and it's everywhere. And you can definitely see an increase in that. And from when I was from the 80s to now, I mean, they're everywhere.
You're absolutely correct.
So I think these 3 points are right on point. That these are good points to show that there is slow disclosure.
I think so. I think it is going on, whether it's by design or just by, we're stumbling along.
What my guess is going to be, I always put this out there, but my hypothesis for how they'll actually do disclosure is with when we go to Mars. I think at some point in the future, they're going to say that they found microbial life on Mars that's alive. And they're going to wait a few years to see how that goes. And then they're going to
Yeah.
start increasing that to, you know, slowly but surely, bigger, and bigger forms of life until they actually say, yeah, they're around.
Yeah.
But you got to test the waters. And I think with this push towards Mars and with these rovers going to Mars looking for life, so very, and I'm not talking about like the secret space program and the theories that Mars is already inhabited and we have like huge bases. I'm just talking about our public NASA version of the space program. It's going to come with microbial life in the next few years. And first they're going to say it's fossils. Then they're going to come and say it's alive. We have true microbiology samples of things, and it's going to go from there.
And that will be a big yawner when that happens. I can't speak for any other country, but I think most Americans will hear that news and just yawn and say, okay, so what?
Well, in a few years, they just approved or are about to approve or they're trying to approve a probe to go out to Europa or what's that? What's the one? Is it the one with the underground, the underwater ocean under the ice?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can't think of it just coming off my head, but they might go out and say, hey, we found a fish or something.
Yeah.
And go from there. I mean, I think that's how disclosure is going to start.
Okay. We gathered up some figures and going back to the previous slide about the media and has disclosure already taken place. Between 1902 and 2022, that's what, 120 years, 645 movies were created involving UFOs and aliens. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them funny, some of them absolutely horrendous, like the Alien franchise with Sigourney Weaver.
Yep.
That Alien versus Predator type of thing.
Yep.
Painting very horrid, gruesome images of extraterrestrials. And of course, on the other end of the extreme, you had E.T., the Steven Spielberg movie that showed us that there are cute, lovable aliens out there.
Or Paul.
Yep. And then I found that over 8,000 books have been published pertaining to the topic of UFOs. That's a lot of words being published.
It is a lot of words.
86 songs I found have references to UFOs in them.
Now that's unique. I didn't think there would be that many songs.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
would write a song about a UFO?
I have the spreadsheet.
No, I believe you. I'm just saying it's like, it's just okay.
And since the television was invented, there have been 55 TV shows involving UFOs or aliens. Again, those run the gamut from the nice, cute, funny things like Lost in Space to what's the latest one? I think it was called V. Remember that one?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Where the aliens were coming not to be our friends. And there are at least 5 UFOs alien documentary movies that have been made, probably more than that, but that's what I found. And in the art world, I was able to find 10 very famous paintings going back, some of them going back centuries, that have images of what sure looked like to me like UFOs, spacecraft.
See, going back to this one is the key. the historical, because they didn't know what an airplane was.
No,
They
they had
don't
no
know
clue what
what
anything
a
back
helicopter
then,
was. They don't know what any of these things were, and yet they're
right?
painting them. And I always love archaeologists. They say, they look at stuff, they paint what they saw. They paint what they saw with the cave wall paintings until they see an alien, and then they're like, oh, that's just their gods. But even in the Renaissance paintings of
Yeah.
that, it's like you can't make it up, because they
Nope.
didn't know what it was. They just painted what they saw.
Exactly. They had no other frame of reference,
Right.
There was no mass media back then to get preconceptions in their head, in their mind. They didn't know
Right.
what they were seeing, so they painted what they saw. Exactly right. Some wild cards, unknowns here. And we've talked about the first one. What are their intentions? And are they friendly, neutral, hostile, or some combination? Or maybe it depends on us how we would react to them. How we treat them is how they would treat us. We just don't know.
I don't know.
I
I
mean,
think
they have not openly attacked us, I don't believe, but there have been cases where they have interfered with the operation of our nuclear deterrent.
true.
Where they
And
shut here and in Russia.
true. And if you look at the abduction cases, some of those are not so friendly, shall we say.
Right.
They're rather invasive and painful and hostile. So I guess it defines on what your what your interaction is with them.
Right. Yeah, we just don't know. And I'm like we talked about earlier, there's probably good ones, probably others that are not so good, just like people, just like humans.
I think that's a fair assessment.
U.S. national security and disclosure. I think I come up with three scenarios there. U.S. national security and sovereignty is weakened by disclosure in some way. In other words, people lose faith in the government's ability to defend them, which is really job one for the government, to protect the homeland and the people.
And I think this is probably the biggest reason why they will not have disclosure, for the reasons we said before. If they can't control what's going into their airspace because they don't understand what it is, that's a huge weakness, and that makes you look weak. It's probably the main reason why there won't be disclosure anytime soon.
That's one of them. Now, is it possible that national security can be strengthened by full disclosure? I put that there as an option. And I should have added a third one. Nothing changes that as far as national security. But are there scenarios in which it would be strengthened by full disclosure of the alien presence and or cooperation with the military?
Well, I mean, that would make the assumption that the aliens are taken aside.
Yeah.
If they're with the United States, then yes, because you have a very powerful ally who, in theory, might come to your defense. If they're more for global unity and world peace and, go to a higher consciousness, then no, because they probably won't share it, or they won't share the technology with us because, we'll weaponize it and then we'll use it. Or if they share it with everyone, another nation might weaponize it. And then all of a sudden you have all these countries with very powerful weapons.
Right.
I think another reason for not having disclosure is that it strengthens national security, because if you can reverse engineer their weapons, like on a broken craft, or even their propulsion system, or any of their technology, and put it into some of your own military technology or surveillance technology, that will strengthen national security. So that may be another reason why there's not going to be any disclosure anytime soon. I know I'm playing the counter argument to the whole point of this particular slide, but it also could play against it, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So,
And again, the bottom bullet there is national sovereignty and national security. I tie those two together. Could be lost to some new global order or government that might come out of full disclosure. In other words, the whole idea of the nation state becomes obsolete.
yeah.
Then
you
what?
see that in Europe with the euro, the Eurozone, and European Union. So yeah, if you have, that makes perfect sense.
But I mean, we don't know. These are all hypotheticals as to what could happen. But some people may say that in that final bullet there, well, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We don't need a nation state anymore. It's passe. We need one world, one people.
Correct.
Personally, I don't know that I'm hitching my horse to that wagon. I don't think humankind is ready for that, for some type of one world, one government.
I think that if you were to say that, you would need, for full disclosure, to somehow raise the consciousness of humans. And you hear this a lot with abductees and people that have interacted with UFO craft, that, or researched or investigated, whatever you want to call it, that a lot of what they want to do is wait for a lot of what they're looking for is for us as a species to raise our consciousness to a more peaceful consciousness. You know, like we're at a very warlike state now. Until we can get to a point where we realize, you know, we have to be one with the environment, one with each other. To your point, then yeah, I don't think humanity is ready for a one world order.
How do you get 8 billion human beings to a higher level of consciousness? That would take millennia in order to do that. You know, there's a certain percentage of the population are probably not far from that state of heightened consciousness and all that, but I don't think the typical human being is ready yet.
Well, from what I read of those that are talking about this particular hypothesis, I'd call it that because there's really no evidence to make it a theory. You would have, if a percentage of the population becomes altruistic and more higher level of consciousness, however you want to define that, you get to a critical mass point, and at that point it literally tips the scale and it moves enough of humanity over that even though you might have a few bad apples, you might have a few people that are just evil, because you're past the critical mass, it won't matter anymore. Humanity will have evolved to the next level.
What is that tipping point though, Mike? For 8 billion people, what is it?
It's a percentage. I don't remember
Like
off the top of my head.
50%? Is it?
I don't remember off the top of my head. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really look into this. I know a lot about it because my little UFO group that I meet with, some of the members talk about this a lot, and they have a lot of discussions at some of our meetings about disclosure. And humanity, and this is like one of the reasons they say that disclosure is not yet happening. But I guess I'm a little too jaded to say that that's a path I want to go down with my own investigations. So
Right.
I can only give you the overall bullet points. I can't give you the point by points because I just never looked into it.
Right.
But I trying to explain to you when you said you don't think humanity is ready yet. I think you're right. The only way to get that is to get the consciousness higher, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to do that anytime soon, unless maybe the aliens come down and help us. That might be a reason for disclosure. The aliens or the species or the entities, whatever you want to call them, say it is time for us to intervene because these humans are not evolving. They are still fighting over these petty things, and they decide to come down and start helping us move
He
in an
just used the
evolutionary
word
path.
intervention.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be in some ways a hostile act?
Depends on how they do it. I mean, if they physically force you to evolve and
There's
force
the
you
physical, then there's the emotional and psychological coercion part.
Yeah, I would take that as a hostile thing. Yeah, you're basically reprogramming humanity to think and act in a certain way.
That may be against our very nature as human beings.
Correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So yeah, you could call that hostile. I would agree with you on that.
And then, and we could even hearken back to the Star Trek franchise and the Prime Directive, right? And
Correct.
that Prime Directive is do not interfere with the natural course of events on a planet and a society, right?
But there is a caveat to the Prime Directive.
There is. What is it?
Once a civilization has reached a technological point, they are able to intervene and make first contact. And in Star Trek, once that was warp drive. So once that civilization was able to achieve faster than light travel, they have evolved to the point, because in theory, they can then go out into the universe and meet other species. So now they are a member of the spacefaring civilizations. You can no longer hide from them. You can no longer not interact with them because they have the ability to go out into the universe now. So then, you can, whether you like it or not, they're going to meet other aliens. So you might as well go out and meet them, basically. That's the point. For us, you could maybe put a little bullet point in there in one of our previous slides about when disclosure might happen. It might happen when we reach a certain technological point. Maybe that is when we are able to create a fully active and functional zero-point energy, a cold fusion machine. Or it might be our own version of warp drive. Mm-hmm. That could be what the aliens are waiting for, and then they'll have disclosure.
Could be. Unless they think we are about to destroy ourselves.
Well, that's true. And that might be why they're disabling our nukes.
With Putin in Russia.
Yeah, but that might be why they're interacting with our nuclear weapons. You mentioned that it might be a hostile act that they're destroying our nuclear weapons tests when our missiles go up. But it also might be their way of saying, listen, children, if you all are going to start a nuclear war, you can see we have the technology and we're going to step in, because we're not going to let you, destroy this planet because it's a valuable planet. There are not a lot of Star Trek calls them M-class planets, but there's not a lot of habitable planets out there. And
not in our own galaxy, there aren't. That's for sure.
So we have a pretty rare commodity here. And two, They probably just don't want us to destroy ourselves. They're like, you people are children. You don't really know what you're playing with.
Right. Playing with
So then we're
matches.
going to have, so it's like a parent saying to a kid, you started a fire and now I'm going to put it out.
hmm
It could be the same. And that could be what forces disclosure. It might be a benevolent act to say, all right, we're going to stop your nuclear war because you people are idiots and you're playing with fire. Literally, you're burning down your house in
Yeah.
about another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
And we touched on religions earlier. I think you and I both agree that they won't collapse. They will learn to live with that reality if it comes to pass. And I don't know that it wipes out, but maybe it does. I don't know. The concept of a deity as the different faith groups in the world believe.
not really. Because if you think about it, like what the Catholic Church was saying, I'm not advocating one religion over another. I'm
Right,
just saying that
right.
this has been well documented because of it. But if you make the argument that they're created by God, then that does leave for a deity, because who created the aliens?
Right.
And maybe, yes, we might be introduced to their religions when they come and see what their gods are, but that's really no different than the religions of Earth. I mean, our prehistoric history, civilizations had multiple gods. There was hundreds of different religions over the centuries, but they all go back to the same foundation of a creator, or creators, or depending on how you do it. But usually there's like one boss. Even with the Greeks, you had Zeus. It's always coming down like one person who is the more dominant of the clan of religious figures. It's just a different way of interpreting the same thing. So I don't think it will destroy the notion of God. It might just show that it's more universal than we thought, so that maybe it really is something there.
Right. Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that one, Mike. I don't think it'll collapse at all. Maybe people will turn to it, whatever their faith.
Hey, whatever
more
floats
Jewish
their boat.
people go to the synagogue, more Christians go to the church.
Sure.
Whatever their religion is, maybe they'll turn to that,
or they'll turn to the aliens religion and find that,
whatever that is,
yeah,
if any. Maybe they're pure logic and science.
They're little Vulcans.
We don't know.
I mean, whatever floats people's boat, but I don't think that it's ever going to really, I don't think it's going to destroy religion or destroy the idea of God. I mean, I think if anything, it will show that it's bigger than what we really believe it's even possible of being.
Yes. Okay. Now, on the individual basis, now there's 8 billion of us on this planet walking around, right?
Yep.
I don't think we can really say how the average human will react. I would think that there will be some percentage of people will freak out. Their worldview is such that they cannot adapt to the idea that the other life forms are here and visiting us. Some percentage may say, nope, it's all BS. It's a government hoax. There's no such thing. I do believe people will say that. Even if the ship landed in Central Park in New York, people will say, nah, that's a government cover-up. It's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
You always have people like that. And his next bullet, some people will celebrate the disclosure. For whatever reason, what comes to mind is, remember that movie Will Smith was in?
Oh, Independence Day.
Independence Day, where they had that group of people celebrating on top of that skyscraper in Los Angeles.
Yep. Until they got blown up by
And
the
they were
alien
holding
weapon.
those placards up saying, "Take me with you."
Yeah. Yeah.
There will be people like that, you know.
Sure there will.
And there's a percentage of people that are, and I think this probably would be the typical American, for better or for worse. People are so busy, you know, they either won't care or they just don't have time to deal with it. You know, they're busy going to work, taking care of their kids or their parents. So there'll be some of that too.
And with a little asterisk to that, it doesn't directly affect them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of like what humans are today. Does it affect me? No, then I don't really care.
I mean, consider the things that, sticking with the American theme, the crap that we cover our spare time with on TV, you know, the shows, that's, you know, people, they'd probably rather watch the Kardashians on TV than worry about whether there's an alien flying over their head.
Sure. Or they'd be on their smartphone watching all those social media apps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what the real ironic thing, I don't know if the word is ironic, the right one, but you know what the real kick in the pants will probably be is that they will be looking at their phone on a social media app, watching the alien ship move through the sky, when in reality, the alien ship is right above their head.
Yeah.
Because they just won't look up.
Nope, that's exactly right, especially the young people.
Yep.
Yep. I don't know, is there any other thing you can think of on the personal level? How would people
I think
react?
these are spot on. I think these 4 points that you have are spot on, and I think it's exactly how people would react if there was disclosure, or if an alien species actually came and like disclosed themselves. Not saying that the government, but both, but especially aliens. So I think you're spot on with this side.
So let me throw this out to you, Mike. The people who welcome the news and would celebrate, what if they're wrong? You know,
I mean, they
people in
get
that
blown up like
category
the
would say,
people.
well, yeah, welcome them with open arms. What if, well, maybe we shouldn't.
Well, it didn't work out so well for the people in Independence Day who celebrated them.
No,
if you remember, they got blown up by the weapon as soon as it started.
And you could probably, as another analogy, the Native Americans, when our European ancestors first set foot on the shores here, I believe, and may not be true in all cases, that the Native American people initially welcomed them. I believe. I mean, probably not always the case, but it didn't work out so well, did it?
I think if they had to I think they would have been a little more aggressive in kicking them out. Yes. Had they known, well, hindsight is 2020, but had they have known, I think they would have been.
And then on the other side of that, the people who are very defensive, like the military, you know, and people, good old boys with guns ready to shoot themselves some aliens. What if, you know, how are they going to react if these entities are in fact benign and only want to come here to get to know us? And
well, they'd probably still lock and load and probably start another war.
That could be, some of those guys could be a problem.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that the aliens have some kind of body shielding on themselves, so that they don't. But you know, the interactions with the alien crafts, with aircraft, with our military aircraft, has shown that they can affect our weaponry.
They just shut down the avionics and the weapons and.
Yep. So,
So it wouldn't be a fair fight, put it that way, if they really wanted, you know.
Oh no, it would be a slaughter. I think we'd get our butts handed to us if we went to war with an alien race. And hopefully we're not that stupid to do something like that. Although you never
I
know.
hope so. Okay. Geopolitics. When we touched on this earlier about national sovereignty, and question is then, first bullet, who speaks for the global population, for all of humanity? I think anybody's qualified to do that, to be honest with you. I can't think of one politician on this planet who is qualified for that job, or even a committee of people. I just can't. Would it be the United Nations? Would it be the NATO allies, the NATO leaders meeting? What do you do about Russia and China?
You know what
How's that all going to come together if full disclosure happens?
I think it depends on how much time there is. I mean, if it comes out of the blue and a plane comes, alien craft comes landing on our front steps tomorrow, it might be whoever gets to it first. But I think a great example of what this might look like if we had the time, like if we knew that this was going to happen, is in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. Mm-hmm. If you remember that movie, this very question was asked, and it was posed: who speaks for humanity? Who represents humanity to these alien races? And what they came up with was basically they created a committee of representatives of all the major faiths and points of views that are held by humanity as a whole, and then they tried to pick someone who most closely held most of those points that represent humanity. And in the movie, you remember the reason Ellie didn't get the spot was because she did not believe in God. She could not say that religion was just a waste of time. And right. Matthew McConaughey's character voted against her. And she said, "Why did you vote against me?" He says, "I could not in good conscience send someone to represent humanity who didn't believe in our most basic fundamental belief that there is a higher being." Right. And he didn't mean what it was a Christian being. He meant a Hindu being, a Muslim being, a Christian being, again, a Buddhist, all of humanity, that the belief that there was a higher power. So I think if there was enough time, who would speak for humanity would probably be a committee, and there would be some vetting process to find a group of people or one person that would represent most of what humanity stands for.
So that second bullet, nations will unite. Mm-hmm. Well, there are two ways, I guess, a couple ways it could go. If the entities are benign and just want to interact with us and cooperate and live in peace with us, would that necessarily bring the countries of the world together to work in harmony with them?
I think it really depends. In other words,
would it be in Vladimir Putin's interest to cooperate with the U.S. if that disclosure takes place? Or is he going to act in his own interest in that of the oligarchs over there?
I think all of humanity, all the nations are going to try and jockey for a little bit of favoritism. I mean, I think that's just, again, looking out for national interests. If we were not under, like when you were saying, we're not ready for a one world government. If we were under a one world kind of, if this was to bring us into a one world environment, then no, it would not unite. It would unite the nations. But if we are not ready for that, I think nations would jockey for positions. I think what it ultimately depends on is the aliens. If the aliens say and come in and say something like, no, you are all going to be treated equal and we're not going to play politics with you, then maybe it will bring a unity within the universe, I mean, within the world. But if the aliens come in and play a little politics with Russia, a little politics with the US, and plays one against the other, then yeah, you're going to have nations that are going to look out for themselves, and you're going to have that jockeying for power and favoritism and access to technology and trade deals and anything else that can advance the nation's interests. So I think the missing key is what kind of aliens are we getting? Benevolent ones or hostile ones?
Right. Right. And on the other side of that is if these beings, these aliens, are not friendly, then would like President Reagan theorized or thought about decades ago, and he said this many times, what if the people of the earth were threatened by an outside race, an outside group of people, not from this planet? And he imagined that the world would come together. I suppose that could happen if they were hostile. I just don't know. Would the US and China and Russia all get along for the global defense?
Well, I think that goes down to the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if they invade us like they did in, Independence Day, yeah, I think the worlds will unite because we all have a collective interest in getting rid of these aliens. No one wants to be conquered by the aliens.
Right.
If they come in and play politics with us and open a little embassy in each country and, just act like another nation state jockeying for positions within the global power base, then no, the countries are not going to unite. But I think the points that you have here, like global war, role of the UN, and on the three we talked about, are probably the best reasons. I think you can argue that this is why they are waiting on disclosure, because if humanity got to a higher level of consciousness, again, going back to this seems like, from what I understand, would end a lot of this, because we will be beyond these petty bickerings with states. We would see a more global perspective in our position within the United and within Earth, within the universe. So this is probably more of why they're not intervening with us, because if they came today with the way we are as a species and the evolution state that we're at, yeah, I think it'll be a mess. But I think if you wait 100 years and we get some better technology, and maybe this is like their version of why the Prime Directive is good for them, because once we get to the technological point where we can go become a spacefaring civilization, then we have moved past these petty things of Earth or this small planet and gone on to the greater points of exploration and uniting as a country for a common goal of space exploration. So I think this might be why they're not doing disclosure. But when these conditions are no longer an issue, this might be a reason for why they will do disclosure on their end.
Okay. Let's see. The role of the UN. I mean, on paper, they represent the nation of 185 countries of the world, all come together and they try to cooperate on issues. Is the United Nations an appropriate spokes group for the people of the planet?
On paper it is, but I don't know
Right.
about in reality.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the United Nations has been, and this is a totally separate non-UFO, it's been a dismal failure. It hasn't kept peace on the planet. It hasn't done, I believe, what it was intended to do. It hasn't prevented wars. So I don't know. I don't know that the UN is qualified to speak for us in dealing with these beings.
Yeah,
Just my
probably
thoughts on
true.
it.
No, it's a good thought, and that's why I agree with you. On paper, it makes perfect sense. In reality, I don't think so.
Yeah, in practice, I don't think I mean, my God, look at who they have on the human rights commissions. They have people like Iran on there, and
Yeah,
some of the worst offenders against human beings you can think of, and they have them on important committees at the UN. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But
true.
and we touched on this earlier, some options of that could come from full disclosure, that the US and world economies might fail. The other option is, actually two other options. The US and world economies are strengthened by any new technologies that come from disclosure. And three, nothing changes. Things just go ahead as they always have been. And I think we kind of settled on that third bullet, didn't we? That
Yeah, we
things will
did.
probably just keep moving along as they have been for a while.
The machine will keep chugging along until, yeah.
I think so. I think you're absolutely correct about that. And that's the end of our slideshow. Mike, any other thoughts on disclosure you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, well, I guess, I think disclosure is going to happen. I do truly believe that. I don't know when, but I will say to the audience that, I've been involved in this field since I was like 18 years old. I got into it actually even earlier. I used to watch the UFO documentaries on the Learning Channel back when I was a kid, TLC, if you remember that station.
Oh, yeah.
And so early 80s. And I can tell you honestly that the amount of disclosure, the amount of information that is coming out in the past 5 years has been more information than in the last 20 something years or 30 years that I've been doing this field of research as a ufologist. So there is definitely a change in the force, so to speak. The force has moved, says the Yoda. There's a disturbance in the force. And I think that is a good thing, and I think there will be disclosure. I don't think we're going to have full disclosure anytime soon. But I could definitely see our grandkids someday maybe finding a signal of an alien civilization. Avi Loeb, just popped into my head. Avi Loeb, in that book he wrote about the light sail, being that it might have been a light sail.
Oh, you
that
mean
came in.
Oumuamua?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if it was a light sail, that would be that would be alien technology. It would be something created by an alien civilization outside of Earth. The world did not come to an end. People did not get freaked out over that. And you can make the argument that, the data is spotty on that. He makes a little bit of assumptions. But it did create a buzz. It did create interest. So I think that the light of disclosure is starting to burn brighter as we move into the 21st century. And I think within this century, we'll have something, whether it's microbial life found or a fish found on some foreign ocean in one of the planets by Jupiter, or even an alien signal, just some random signal. They said, "Hey, we found the early show of
right.
Alpha Centauri radio or something." But I think we're moving that direction, and I don't think the world's going to come to an end, but I don't think we're going to have aliens land on our front lawn anytime soon. But I think we're going to start getting answers. Slowly but steadily, the answers will start being released. What do you think, Dan?
I think we have finally reached a point where things are soon approaching a critical mass, where this idea of disclosure is taking on a life of its own. You know, the public is going to, the voice is demanding accountability and openness with what's going on. I think that's really building. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So what are
As
we doing
long
now?
as our elected officials have the courage and the integrity to be honest with us. You know,
Yeah, I have to say,
politicians being what they are, you just never know what you're going to get.
yeah. I have to say on that point about the elected officials, if you watch the hearings they had last June, the two people involved with the new UFO organization that the Pentagon has started, they kept saying we want to be open and transparent with the public, and they were very clear on that. And then a few weeks later, they released the rules for how this new program is going to operate. Everything is classified.
Right.
Where's the openness? Where's the transparency? Everything is classified.
Well,
so
I think it depends, Mike, on what it is they're classifying. If they're classifying the fact of UFOs is one thing, but if how we have reached conclusions is drawn from classified collection capabilities, whether they're in space, undersea, because we have those. We have very powerful sensors around the globe. So there are certain things that they have to keep behind closed doors. So say they said, well, we know that a UFO landed in, I don't know, just Siberia. The natural question is going to come, well, how do you know that? Well, did you have an eyewitness there? You tracked it? How did you track it? Oh, it came out of the water. How do you know that? And I think it depends on the class, what it is they're classifying. Sources and methods you have to keep hidden from the general public.
And I understand
and
that.
the adversaries. That's why.
Yes, I understand that. But here's my point. Everything can fall under sources and methods. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you look at the unclassified version of the report that came out, it was like, 9 pages. The classified version of the report was released in a FOIA request by another researcher. And when you read that, one of the pages talks about the shapes that were identified in the study. The shapes are classified. Who cares if it's a round UFO, if it's a triangle UFO, if it's a rectangle? Why is that classified? That's not important. It doesn't protect sources and methods.
No,
okay, maybe it protects the cameras used, but you don't need to say the resolution of the objects.
Right.
But my point is they're so extreme that they're just classifying everything, and they're using the umbrella of sources and methods.
That is a danger. Yes.
And that is what I'm getting at, is that there's nothing transparent about this program. And then with the recent report that was just released a few weeks ago, I don't know if you read it, it's a complete joke as well. I mean, it tells you a little bit of information. You can grab little pieces here and here and here. But it's just a glorified report of the previous one.
Right.
And I know there was a classified version of it, and I know some researchers have put in FOIAs for the classified version of it, but I would almost guarantee that would be just as redacted as the last one.
Yeah, it will.
And they're going to fall back on sources and methods. And again, I understand the protection clause for that, because we don't want them to know. We don't want our adversaries to know that. But at the same time, it's a little bit lazy on the airport. I mean, you can look at the information and dissect it to say, well, shapes are not classified. The resolution that you took them is classified because it tells you what the camera used. Fine.
Right.
But do a little effort and be a little more transparent. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't come
I agree
on
with you.
Capitol Hill and say, we're going to be open and we're going to be transparent with the public. And then everything you give us from then on is classified. And you just use the blanket umbrella policy of it's protecting sources and methods.
Yeah. You're right.
So,
We sometimes do have a tendency to overclassify. That's just how it's been for decades.
yeah.
You're right.
So what's for next podcast? What's our next topic going to be? What do you think?
Boy, let's take a look. I need to open up our spreadsheet. Just have you heard of a being named Valiant Thor? The story goes that, and I believe it's Alexandria, Virginia, right outside of DC, just across the river. A spacecraft landed in a lot in Alexandria or Arlington, one of the two. I'm not sure which. Doesn't matter. And this police officer rolled up, and being walked out of that craft, identified himself as Valiant Thor, and asked to be taken to the Pentagon, which the police officer made calls on his radio and got all the permissions he needed to get, and he took him over to the Pentagon. And Valiant Thor, the story goes, is he spent years and years working within the Pentagon with U.S. Department of Defense. So if it's all right with you, that'll be our next topic.
Works for me. I don't know much about him. I've heard of the name, but I'd like to learn a little more. So I will research it
now
on
and our
my
next
end.
podcast, we'll do some good research and go from there.
Sounds good, Dan.
All right.
All
Ladies
right,
and gentlemen,
everyone.
thank you so much for watching our show. We hope you enjoyed it, and please provide that feedback.
That's right. And don't forget to like our page on our Twitter account. It's No Boundaries, No Limit, No Boundaries UFO Podcast. The link for our Twitter account is at our YouTube page. More social media will be coming down the pike. And don't forget to hit our subscribe button. Helps us out a lot. And leave your feedback on our posts. All right, everyone. Good night. Good night, Dan. Thank you for spending the evening with me.
You bet, Mike. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.